Stand by to initiate release sequencer. On my mark. 5.
We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
2. 1. Mark.
Hello everyone, my name is Mark, aka Derringer. Today is Sunday, October 8th, and you are listening to episode 126 of the Instant Action Podcast, your weekly source for Planetside 2 news and information. As always, I'm being brought to you by great listeners like you via the Support the Show tab on instantactionpodcast.com. Speaking of that Support the Show tab, I do want to continue to thank everyone who is supporting the show, either through Patreon, by using my Amazon link, making direct PayPal donations, whatever. I mean, your support is really appreciated, and it's just one of the myriad reasons I come back and do a podcast every week. Second, a big thanks to everyone who made birthday wishes or sent birthday wishes out to me last week. I had a good birthday. Even though, third thing, I did get sick again. I was sick as a dog with the friggin' flu at the end of last week or during last week. So really did not have a lot of chances to play Planetside 2 this week. I did get a couple hours here or there and played a bit. But certainly not as much as I wanted to just because I was feeling like garbage. And then Thursday, we spent the day up at the University of New Hampshire with my daughter, checking that college out. She's thinking about going there. Friday, I had a wedding to go to. So this beautiful double XP weekend that's going on right now, I didn't get a chance to play on Friday. Because, of course, you go to a wedding, you stay late, and it's late when you get home. So there's that. And then, yesterday... Saturday, I spent the entire afternoon closing my pool for the season, which is sad in its own right, and that took me far longer than expected. So I didn't get a chance to play last night. Haven't had a chance yet to play tonight either, Sunday. So I'm going to try and wrap up recording of this show as soon as I can to at least hop in and try and play a couple hours tonight to take advantage of it. So with that, what's actually in store for this week's show? Well, first I have a hotfix to go over, and then some discussions about server transfers, since that seems to be the hot topic this week. After that, I'm going to talk about the new implants based on an email that I received last week and said I'd talk about this week. And I also want to talk about the new Halloween directive stuff that was talked about on the last dev live stream, since Halloween stuff should be right around the corner. So strap in as we hot drop into another episode of the Instant Action Podcast. All right, first up, like I said, we have a short hotfix to talk about. This is the October 5th PC Hotfix. The biggest thing within this hotfix was the change to the meltdown alert durations. They were originally 30 minutes. They've now been increased to 45 minutes, so 15 minutes longer than they were previously. I've played an awful lot of these 30-minute alerts, so I kind of agree that the 30-minute timeline wasn't enough time, and especially when you had, let's say, for example, your your faction had captured 41 or 45% of the continent and was just waiting for that cordium to tick for the meltdown alert to go off, and then since you had such a huge lead, you only had to own 36% after that, so you could even lose a bunch of territory and still easily win the alert. So I felt 30 minutes was, a little too short. That being said, I'm hoping 45 minutes isn't too long. Like I said, when the faction launching the alert had such a large territory lead, they were very rarely losing the alert and very rarely even coming close to losing the alert. So hoping this 45-minute change actually pushes it out a bit and gives a chance for the other two factions that are attacking to kind of chip away at the territory lead that the launching faction actually has. And maybe we'll see less instances of the launching faction win now that it's a 45-minute alert. The other side of the coin to that is obviously the people who played online for 2 hours. Let's just say prime time. You play from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. prime time. At 10 p.m., the alert kicks off. People are willing to play another 30 minutes to push their way through that alert. 45 minutes might be too long for some of those people, so we'll see how that actually works going forward. But all in all, I think 45 minutes is probably a better time frame to give the two attacking factions a better chance to chip away at a large territory lead. Also, with the meta itself, new continents will now unlock when the global population reaches 800 players. That's up from 600 players. And the goal is to reduce the chance of a sparse third continent opening. And there were a number of instances when I've been playing where a third continent has been open and there's been absolutely no one on it. One faction is just ghost capping like crazy to try and push an alert to happen that the other two factions can't come back and beat them against. So certainly happy to see the global population increase. And the only downside I could see to this could be Briggs, which sometimes has trouble fielding 800 players total. So it could be tough for a server such as that. But I think overall it's probably a better idea. Next, there were some changes to vehicle and infantry, specifically flak-based projectiles. The flak-based explosives, this is your burster, your skyguard, your ranger, your ground-to-air lock on missiles, etc. They're all being standardized to a 5-meter inner blast and an 8-meter outer blast. And the goal is to make the area of effect reductions from the last updates. They thought they might be causing too low damage output against moving vehicles, as those vehicles weren't able to receive damage notifications quickly enough. So, and I know the Ranger in particular was being shat on by multiple members of the community as being absolute garbage after this change. So hopefully this flak-based projectile change will allow the moving vehicles to actually register that they're being hit by these flak-based explosives and actually take their damage going forward. In addition, the Ranger on the Sunderer had an indirect damage increase, and the Skyguard also had an indirect max damage increase as well, again, to compensate for these additional flak adjustments. Next, there was a small bug fix to fix the flanker armor description. Big whoop. But the big news was obviously that a double XP for all players weekend was scheduled for October 6th through October 8th. Again, it's ending tonight, so I'm going to zip through the remainder of the show just so I can log in at least one night and play it. So, again, not a ton of changes, really just some quick and dirty tweaks, easy tweaks that they saw as issues that were going forward. I would expect another hot fix to come this week, based on the complaints that I'm seeing with the Combined Arms Initiative, mainly tanks taking too much damage from air and things like that. So again, I do expect another hotfix to come next week, and I can talk about that on next week's show. But with that, let's move on to our second topic this week. All right, topic number 2 this week is server transfers. And besides the Combined Arms update or initiative complaints that I saw, I think server transfers were probably the next biggest complaint that people are actually talking about in-game. And it's really seems to be mostly Connery players which are complaining. And just to keep a long story short, and I don't want to point fingers, the one of the bigger complaints is that Chinese players are playing on the Connery server, and I've made jokes about all Connery players being Chinese and stuff like that, and hopefully that was taken tongue-in-cheek like it was supposed to, because obviously that certainly is not the case completely with Connery, but there definitely are a subset of players on the Connery server from China who may have poor connections, may not have poor connections, and it's driving Connery players to want to transfer off that server. And in fact, Many players have created new player characters on the Emerald server as a result because they don't want to play on Connery anymore because they feel that the lag that some of these people pose due to really high pings between their connections is causing gameplay to be bad on Connery. Now, I have not played on the Connery server in a number of years. My main played on Connery back when we were doing Reachcast, so I certainly have roots in the Connery server, but I have been playing on Emerald at this point much longer than I have been playing on Connery. Obviously, Emerald is a much closer home server for me as well, playing on the East Coast like I do. Now, one part of me wants to see server transfers come to the game itself. And I know personally that server transfers are possible. There's nothing stopping Daybreak Games from doing a server transfer currently. And the reason I know this is true is because I had a character transferred from one server to another. I actually, had my main, who played on Emerald at the time, transferred to Connery, and my Connery character transferred to Emerald. So my character with the name Derringer plays on Connery's VS character on Connery. When I started, that was my character on Emerald, who was playing TR. And I contacted Daybreak Games, and we're talking 2013 early, or a number, 4 years ago at this point is what we're talking about. And I asked them if I could take my character with the name Derringer on one server and move it to a different server so that I could play there over as VS. And they did it as a special favor to me. So I can say that server transfers are definitely possible because I had one done for me. I have never asked for another, and I was told not to tell anybody that they're available because for all intents and purposes, they are not available, even though they are possible. So don't take this information from me and go running to Daybreak Games and demand a server transfer because one player at one time 4 years ago got a transfer so that they could experience a different server than the other podcast hosts were experiencing at the time. So I'm only saying that it's possible. I'm not saying that they're going to be doing it. So again, one side of me feels for these people on Connery and says, why don't we unlock server transfers? Why don't we make it a $50 charge to transfer from one server to another? Many people would happily pay that to get off of Connery. There are other people that would not pay that to get off of Connery, and certainly that is their prerogative as well. I think that offering server transfers for a fee like that and then only allowing you to transfer once every 30 days, once every 60 days, once every 90 days even, is not out of the realm of possibility. I would certainly support a $50 fee and maybe a 90 or at least a 30-day period to allow you to do it a second time. I think this would give the players who feel like they're having a bad experience on Connery able to move over to a different server. I don't really think that the quote-unquote Chinese players on Connery are going to pay this fee to come over to Emerald or something like that. I don't think players on the European servers are going to move over to Emerald or anything like that. I mean, people might move off of the Brig server to play on some of the more populous servers out there on the Euro side, but I mean, what it all comes down to is $50 is a huge fee in my mind. I don't believe that I would spend $50 to transfer servers. $50 is just such a high fee for me to pay in-game to do something like a server transfer. And if it's prohibitive for someone like me to pay something like that, I think it's prohibitive for the majority of the population within the game to pay for something like that to switch servers. And I think only the people that are completely fed up with lag switching, lag wizardry, high pings, whatever they want to call it, are going to pay a fee like that. And therefore, the number of people taking advantage of it are going to be extremely low. And I don't think that it's going to hurt servers too much. Now, Serious Gaming does an excellent video on this, which I'm going to link in this week's show notes as well. It's 15 minutes long. I recommend everybody who is considering transferring servers or has a complaint about players on Connery and how they play and things like that. I would highly recommend you go and watch this video. He gives his opinions on server transfers, and while they differ from mine a little bit, the more important stuff within that video, not saying that everything in his video isn't important, but the nice takeaways within his video is he gives some tips, some simple tips on how to deal with a delay in damage being dealt to you and things like that, and maybe some play style that you can think about when you're playing the game and how to engage, disengage, re-engage, things like that. I found it very valuable information and stuff that I'm going to take to my next play session and make sure I'm doing some of the things that he's doing within the game itself, which would allow me to win some of the situations where I feel that server input lag is probably affecting my particular death. So again, regarding server transfers, I am all for them, and I do hope that Daybreak Games considers doing server transfers in the future. And again, I want them to be a fee that is something that the average player is not going to want to pay every 30 days to switch servers with their characters. I mean, again, it's got to be at least a $50 fee in my mind for something like that to happen. Now, I, for one, would love to see server transfers, because at this point, my character with the name Derringer is stuck over on Connery. I never play him anymore. I've got to play Yes, I Am That Derringer on the Emerald server, which I want to change that name so bad. But even shelling out $25 for a name change feels prohibitive to me as well. Even though $25 isn't a heck of a lot, maybe I should just do it at some point. But see, I'm so averse to spending money that I will not spend it on something like that if it's not something I feel is really worthwhile to my gameplay itself. And I think a lot of players feel the exact same way, that they're not going to shell out large sums of cash to do something like a server transfer or even a name change. I don't think I've ever done a name change in a game like WoW or a server transfer in WoW or anything like that, because I won't pay those fees in that particular game either. So Planetside 2 just kind of feels the same way to me itself. Again, I want to push everybody over to Serious Gaming's videos as well. There was just so much interesting additional information in that video that I feel most players don't take into account or don't even think about, specifically how to do engagements, when to break off from engagements and reset them so they're in your favor, things like that. A lot of good information that I can't wait to use when I actually jump in-game and play again myself. So I guess I'm going to kind of wrap up this particular topic this week, and just to TLDR it, I am for server transfers, even though other people aren't. I want them to be a high fee. I want there to be a delay between doing them. But I also understand that Daybreak Games is not going to do it at this point, because the manpower to implement something like this, because it's not an automated thing. They actually have to have somebody go in and make all the transfers themselves. Again, I got assigned a specific customer service person at Daybreak Games who took care of it for me, based on a request put through by Raider X at the time, Tony. Again, just as a favor to me. So don't expect anything like this to come in-game unless they program something directly into the UI to do this for them without any, hand-holding from a Daybreak Games associate. So, again, I understand that is the case, but with the right amount and the correct time frame between doing it, I don't think that it would hurt the population on any given server if they implemented server transfers. So I've been a proponent of server transfers since the beginning of the game. I've also been a proponent of things like buying items for other players and gifting them, but that's never come to the game either, at a detriment to Daybreak Games and Planetside 2 overall. So again, I don't want to beat a dead horse on this particular topic, so let's move on to our next one this week. And the third topic this week, this was something I talked about quickly on last week's show, because I did get a email from SetFlow on the Miller server, and he asked, he said, here's some current controversy on the PS2 Reddit at the moment. I think I read this last week, but would be interesting to hear your thoughts on the next podcast about it. And then he gave me a link to the new faction-specific implants that are coming to the game. And he said that these look like the most Zerg and Pocket NG Max combo-friendly implants yet. And he thinks they will probably result in a ban of that implant specifically on the Jaeger server. And that's obviously for competitive stuff that goes on outside the game itself or inside the game itself. So first, let's talk about these 3 new implants. And there's more than 3. There's actually 6 that we saw on the dev live stream, but we know information about 4. And specifically, these are the 3 faction-specific ones. The first one is called Accurize, and this is the Vanu Sovereignty one. And this implant says that killing an enemy has a 10% at rank 1, 20% at rank 4 chance to reduce the minimum cone of fire of you and your squad mates within 15 meters by 30% for 2.5 seconds. Additionally, if you rank it to rank 5, this implant has a 2% chance to trigger whenever experience is gained. So again, Vanu players with this will have a chance to reduce cone of fire, making their shots shoot straighter. Terran Republic will get access to one called Firestorm, and this one, killing an enemy at tier 1 has a 10%, 12% at 2, 15% at 3, 20% at 4 chance to give you and squad mates within 15 meters of you no ammunition costs in your primary weapon for the next 2.5 seconds. If you rank this up to 5, additionally, this implant has a 2% chance to trigger whenever experience is gained. And finally, the one that appears to be giving the most complaints on Reddit would be the Fortify implant available to the new conglomerate. And this one is killing an enemy has a 10% at rank 1, 12% at 2, 15% at 3, 20% at 4, just like the other 2. Chance to give you and squad mates within 15 meters 20% increased frontal armor for 2.5 seconds. If you get this up to rank 5, it also has a 2% chance to trigger whenever experience is gained. The big one for this one, though, is that it also does not stack with the current Safeguard implant, so you couldn't be using both of them. And SetFlow's complaints are, I think, justified with the Fortify one. The only thing I want to take into account is that the devs did specifically say that none of these are going to work with a max suit. So you can't equip them with your max suit, and also if you're in a max suit, you're not going to get the bonus of Accurize, Firestorm, or Fortify. So maybe that will ease some of the fears of some players with these particular implants. I do also agree with SetFlow's comments that this seems like a Zerg implant. I mean, it's really going to give NC a leg up on breaching and really encourage Zerging, maybe over tactical play within the game itself. So I would really hope at this point they're rethinking this one as a particular new conglomerate trait. I think the other 2 are probably fine at this point. I mean, just changing cone of fire and ammo certainly isn't as much of a game changer as giving more frontal armor is for the other ones. Now, does that mean I need to think of something for NC instead? I guess, but right off the top of my head, I can't really think of a particular one. Again, the only thing I can say is that at least this doesn't appear that it's going to work with maxes at this point. So I'm kind of actually happy with that one as well. So I got to thank SetFlow for bringing this one to my attention, because I do kind of feel, and the sucky part is I play NC more than any other one, and I would love to see an implant like this come into the game itself, but it would not be beneficial, I think, in its current iteration. Maybe tongue-in-cheek, I think it might be better to increase the rear armor of NC players. That might increase survivability, since obviously NC is a lot of team killing. Maybe that's the particular change that we can see to this implant before it comes to live. Otherwise, I don't really like what it is, what we've seen. And again, no one has even tested this thing, so I gotta at least throw that caveat out there. This is just something that we saw on a dev live stream, last week or 2 weeks ago at this point. So no one has had a chance to play with it to see how often it's going to trigger, or how beneficial it is actually going to be to the NC. But on paper, it looks a little overpowered to me at this particular point. And with that, let's move on to our final topic this week. And that final topic is the new Halloween event. And this is all information that we've gathered from that dev live stream 2 weeks ago. And yeah, I probably should have talked about the dev live stream on last week's show, but with the critical mass update and the Combined Arms Initiative dropping, there was just too much stuff to talk about on last week's show and keep the show at a respectable length. So that's why some of this stuff was moved over to this week. And what do we know about the new Halloween event? Well, let's talk about first what we don't know. And we don't know when this event is actually going to go live. In the past, it has started around... last year it ran from October 14th to November 7th. And if that's the case, let's take a look at a calendar here real quick. October 14th was the second Friday in the month of October last year. Let me just click through this again real quick. October 14th was the second Friday. So if that is any indication of when the next event is going to be, it could launch as early as this Friday the 13th. That would make an awful lot of sense, Friday the 13th wise. And if that's the case and it runs 5 weeks from that, or 4 weeks out from that point, that would make perfect sense. So I'm calling it right now that I wouldn't be surprised if the Nanite of the Living Dead, which is an awesome name, by the way, launches this Friday, the 13th, coming up. Again, I have no information from Daybreak Games that that's the case. I am just basing it off what we saw last year and the time frame that it ran last year. So what we do know about the Halloween event is that, again, you'll be able to purchase things like the slasher and the various masks / helmets and the candy cannon again. But we also know that it will rely a lot less on pumpkin hunting than past events have. And also the directives for the Nanite of the Living Dead have also changed. We now have 5 different directives to work on. The first one's called Vengeful Spirit. And in that one, melee kills with the Vampire or Nightmare implant equipped are going to award you kills towards this one. The next one, called Toil and Trouble. When you earn resupply ribbons while wearing a Halloween mask equipped, you're going to earn these. The next one's Necromancer. Revive ribbons with a Halloween mask equipped are going to earn these. There's also one called Headless Horseman, and in this one, kills from a flash while wearing a Halloween mask or helmet are going to award that one. And finally, the Hallow Hunter. earning Halloween ribbons by killing targets with Halloween weapons, and these are your slasher, candy cannon, or the new pumpkin grenades that they're coming out with. Now, before I talk about the pumpkin grenades, note that missing from this list is getting a galacto-lantern or killing any of the regular jack-o'-lanterns that are going to spawn. So I'm very excited about that. It means a lot less people flying around farming these pumpkins and galacto-lanterns, which was super annoying. So back to the pumpkin grenades. What are they? Well, obviously they're a grenade shaped like a pumpkin. If you kill a target while using this grenade, you're going to earn points toward your Hallow Hunter. Right now on their screen during the live stream, the grenades cost either 1 Daybreak Cash or 1 Pumpkin Seed. Pumpkin Seeds are still going to be awarded by killing a Jack-o'-lantern or Galacto-lantern within the game itself when those actually go live. Hopefully that number doesn't really change. Something that I suggested during the live stream, and I hope the devs listen to this week's show and take this into account. I think it would be insanely awesome if someone threw a pumpkin grenade at you, and if it hit you and it exploded, you kind of see it explode in a shower of seeds. I thought it would be cool if you actually got a seed or two in your inventory. If you got hit by a pumpkin grenade, I think that would be a cool little addition to stop people from just going out in the world and farming pumpkins and galacto-lanterns. Again, I don't know how feasible that is to do, but I think that would be a cool addition to the game itself. Allow anybody hit by a pumpkin grenade to collect 1 seed in their inventory, or 2 seeds, or maybe random 1 to 3 seeds. It'll just keep the pumpkin grenades flowing. It's really what it'll do. Now, if you finish off the second tier of this directive, you're going to get a novice implant pack, and Rel's pretty much said anybody just participating in this is going to get that novice implant pack. It's really easy to get. When you move up to tier 3, this is the expert tier, you're going to earn a horseman title. And finally, if you finish the master, the 4th tier, it's going to reward an exceptional implant called phylactery. And what this implant does is it gains charges whenever you gain experience in the game itself. And if you have gained 50 charges, it works as a self-revive. So when you are fully charged up, there's a graphical showing these green balls of light are kind of popping out off your body. And also, if you're dead on the ground, these green balls kind of float up off your body, so people know that you have this activated and are able to come back to life. If you do self-revive, you revive with half health, so you're easier to kill than other players. But kind of a cool little implant. And this is something that you can get during the event, obviously for free, by finishing off the tier 4 of the directive. Also, once the event is over, once the Nanite of the Living Dead is over, they're going to add this implant to the regular implant rotation. So you could randomly receive this implant anytime after the Nanite of the Living Dead is over. So pretty cool. Next, some new stuff added to the depot. Flame Rider tires. These are exactly what you think they are. They're tires that kind of have flames on them, and when they move, they spin. It's kind of a neat little effect. These are going to be available on both the Flash and the Harasser. They're going to take up your light slot, and they're going to be unlockable via pumpkin seeds or Daybreak Cash. They will only be purchasable during the Nanite of the Living Dead event, but if you do purchase them during that time, you can equip them on your vehicle year-round. So something that you people can go out and try and get if you're into something like that. Overall, I'm very excited for this rework, and it makes me also think that when Christmas rolls around, that we're going to have a redo of the Christmas directives as well. I'm excited for something like that. So bring on the Halloween stuff. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if we see this stuff drop on the 13th. And with that, let's move to housekeeping this week.
Housekeeping. Housekeeping.
Come back later, please.
Housekeeping.
Not now.
Housekeeping.
Go away.
I coming anyway?
So unfortunately, no emails, no voicemails this week. Just kind of a quiet week. So that's going to be it for this week's show. How can you get in touch with me or the show? As always, start by visiting my website, www.instantactionpodcast.com. Send me an email, instantactionshow@gmail.com. Call me, leave me a voicemail, 347-4VM4PS2 or 347-486-4772. You can find me on Twitter. The show's Twitter is @InstActPodcast, and my personal Twitter is @TheDerringer. So in closing, if you've enjoyed the show, please leave me a review on your podcast listening avenue of choice, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere else. Also, feel free to tell your friends and outfit mates about the show. And finally, thanks for listening, and keep spamming that Join Combat, formerly known as Instant Action button.